Hey everyone, welcome to the very first episode of Sports Card Madness. This podcast is going to focus on sports cards, collectibles, the hobby, and really everything else in between. I'm your host, Nick Andrews, also known as Boston Card Hunter on Instagram. And for this very first episode, I sat down with one of my closest friends and collectors, LZ, and we talked about our collections, the hobby at large, different trends. We even did a little segment we called Madness University, where we covered a topic or two that might relate to beginner collectors and kind of help them get started. But there's plenty in here for veterans as well. I mean, we talked about kind of deep topics like the industry and grading. Where we think things are headed with Fanatics. So hopefully you guys enjoy. I'm going to probably do a lot of conversational interviews like this, but also some formal ones, especially when I have different guests come on. But I thought it was great. You guys should love it. And let's dive in. Hey everyone, this is Nick, aka Boston Card Hunter on Instagram, and this is the very first podcast for Sports Card Madness. I'm super excited to have you all here. I've got my closest friend and collector. He's actually my brother-in-law, LZ, and we're excited. We're gonna just talk about the hobby for a while, keep it casual, lots of different trends, and just try to just kick things around and have some fun. So welcome, Larry.
Oh, Nick, thanks so much. It is a very exciting day today. This is a milestone for us and this podcast. And I just wanted to, thank you for having me on and being part of this. I'm very excited to, just share our thoughts and feelings on the collectible market.
Excellent. Yeah, so for the audience, Larry and I just bore our families to tears on Thanksgiving and barbecues because all we ever talk about in a corner is sports cards. So we figured we'd get some of that on tape and, you can possibly enjoy the conversation. So
yeah, this is a way of almost scheduling our conversations a bit more. So during those holidays, we don't get the evil eye from some of our family members.
Yeah, it's almost permission to talk sports cards once a week, so it's pretty awesome.
It is going to be awesome.
Good stuff. So, so LZ, I think it'd be cool if you just gave an intro on, maybe what you've been up to in the hobby and your experience, and then I'll kind of let the audience know where I'm at. And
yeah, I think that's a great way to start this. I've been collecting for a long time. Back when I was a tween, or it probably started when I was probably 7 or 8 years old. It's probably a very similar story to many of our listeners. I was very into the hobby, and then school came, family came. That kind of went away for a while, but the pandemic, like many people, brought me back into the hobby, and it's been great. It's probably one of the few things that was actually good about the pandemic, because it forced me to dust off a lot of these old cards and see what I had, and catch up on what's going on in the market, because there's so many new things happening in the collectibles market right now. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're putting this podcast together, is to help people understand what's going on, and the terms and the acronyms and all of those things. But the past couple of years have been a wild ride. It's great. I got to the point probably in my life where I kind of needed a new hobby, and this came about, and I dove in head first back into the game, and building a few sets, Facebook groups, and just meeting a lot of people. And I know we'll get into that. We'll get into a lot of that later, but I mean that to me, and I will touch on it later, but that to me has been probably the best thing over the past couple of years, is meeting all of these new people in the hobby. It's been great. And I know that you're going to introduce many of those people to this audience. That's a little teaser, but I think that's the plan. So, I mean, that's been my story, at least for the past, let's call it 3-4 years in the hobby space. What about you, Nick?
Yeah, so it's similar to me. I obviously collected during the wax era as a kid. I had all kinds of cards that are worth nothing now. But one memorable thing was I had a 5th grade teacher, and his name was Mr. Sullivan, and he had an assignment for us where we needed to write a letter to each of our favorite sports players. And I was like, you can do that? Because I was 10 and, it's not something you really think of. And he's like, yeah, they might write you back. So I sent a bunch of them out, and I sent cards with them and got a bunch of cards signed. And it was super fun. I think I did it again in the mid-'90s. I got like Karl Malone and Allen Iverson and a couple other people. And it was really cool. And then really went dormant, like, college, family, all that good stuff. And the pandemic sort of kickstarted it for me too. I just started, I had season tickets to the Celtics for a while, and I started just buying like players I liked, like, Jason Tatum's rookie cards and Jaylen Brown's rookie cards. Nothing crazy, certainly not what I'm doing now. And then the pandemic hit, and I was like, all right, this is kind of interesting. I'm super bored. What can I do? And like you said, I really dove in, and it's interesting. I think what I can offer the audience here is I've basically gone from zero, I would say, in 2021.
Oh, your wax wasn't worth anything?
Yeah, exactly.
Come on. And we should get into that too. Why isn't wax worth anything? But
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So I went from zero in 2021 to close to a 7-figure collection now.
Bravo.
Yeah, and I haven't spent 7 figures, I assure you. And I think I can kind of help the audience understand the path that I took to get there, which is pretty cool. And it started with a pretty crazy event with a fake Jordan, which was fun.
Yeah, well, as the value of that collection grows, you're going to have to look up that old teacher and maybe send him or her a thank you note, because those autographs are certainly helping the value of many of your cards, as are mine. And we'll probably spend episodes just talking about autographs, but there's a similar experience too with the Celtics games. I mean, you were a season ticket holder, so you definitely brought me to some of them and showed me how that worked. And again, it comes down to experiences, and it's not just about the card itself or the value of the card, but it's about the experience. It's about the hunt of finding that card or chasing down that celebrity or athlete and getting that autograph, and the rush that you get, the adrenaline high you get when you're right up close with one of them, and they're
I get that through the mail too. Come on.
It's true. Mail day is an exciting day
for sure.
It definitely is. Yeah.
So LZ, why on earth would anyone want to listen to us and this podcast? What do you think? What do you think we can offer the audience?
I think there's many things that we can offer the audience. There's different. We're gonna have different kind of types of audience members. We're gonna have the novice that are just starting out, and for them, like, we were there 3 years ago. We were there for 3 years ago, and we started back in the day, but we took a big break. So, how to get going in this market, this collectibles market again, and understanding terms and acronyms, and I think it will help them to not feel intimidated when they start jumping into collecting. So that there's that part of it. We're gonna get I don't know if you want to call it like the weekend warrior type people that every weekend they're doing this and they're going to card shows, and my hope is that we can bring to them maybe some insight on some players or some types of cards that maybe they should be going after, maybe some up and coming rookies that maybe they're not thinking about that might be good to chase. And then on the high end, the experts, because we've met a lot of people, you've met a lot of people, Nick, that you're going to have on this show. I think for them, it's going to be the guests. We're going to bring experts from all different parts of this market on here. We're going to bring, the novice collector. We're going to bring hobby shop owners, breakers, and all some of these terms, for new folks, might be tough, and even breaker, right? Maybe they don't know what that means, and we'll explain that. But I just think we're going to make it for everybody. I think everybody is going to be able to get something out of this type of show, and it's going to be very approachable. I think you and I talked about this, like planned for it, and we want to make sure that it's approachable to everybody. No one feels intimidated or, just we want to make sure their confidence is high and they feel comfortable listening to us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm super excited about the guests. I've probably gotten ahead of myself because I'm so passionate about this, but I think I've got 20 guests lined up, or at least they've sort of said yes to me. So we'll see how that goes. And it's from all parts of the industry, everything from PSA graders to veteran collectors to just sort of, pseudo celebrities in the hobby. So that's fun. And I think, it's great from your angle, but, what I want to offer, I think I can help the veteran collectors a lot too. I mean, I've done some crazy stuff in the last 2 years. One example is in 4 months, just putting together the entire 1986 Fleer autograph set, which is probably a record. I don't know. There's nothing
and
official.
And that includes Jordans,
That
right?
includes the Jordans.
So that includes Michael Jordan rookies, and he's got 2 of them in that set.
Correct, yeah. He's got the sticker and the base. Very tough cards. There's about 130 cards in the set. And then I even went a step further and got every living referee from that season to sign a checklist, which is nuts.
It's amazing.
So we can help, cool. Like Larry was saying, we'll have guests. It'll be entertaining. We can help with some of the basics, but I can probably help some veterans, find these players, or even just like if they want to begin on how to pick a set or something like that. I think it'll be pretty cool. And we'll cover stuff like that all the time.
So what you had mentioned that you already have 20 people signed up, like 20 kind of experts out in the field signed up. I'm curious. All right, so you've been back in this space for probably like 4 years. Like, how are you meeting these people? How did you already nail down 20 people?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I started just with Google, like probably anybody would, right? And I found 3 or 4 card forums that look like they haven't been updated since like 1996. And on those forums are, lots of people talking about these sets and these cards. They have their email addresses. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to hit them up. And then it's almost like a rabbit hole. They've led me down to Facebook groups. I mean, some of these groups have 100,000 plus collectors in them, and they're very passionate. So you can go on and say, what's up with this set? What's up with this card? What is this valued at? And you'll get an answer in minutes. And there's, there's obviously some of the other usual suspects like Reddit and things like that. But, Instagram's great as well. It's been super helpful to connect with people for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's all about educating yourself. And I think those are all great tools that you mentioned. Like, it's great. It's a fantastic tool to meet people. But it's also a great way of starting to educate yourself in the collectible space. If you start following collectors, like, they're going to post 10 times a day. And it's going to be this card or that card or this break or this is how I found this or this is how I did that. And I mean, we all use social media now, so I think it's just a great tool to just have that in the background, have those feeds coming in on a daily basis. Eventually it sinks in. It just sinks in. Around the Facebook thing, so you actually got me getting onto these Facebook groups a couple of years ago.
Yeah, you went dark for a while, I said there is no choice. You will not be successful.
I know. I did. I moved away from a few of the social media platforms for a while, but I'm so happy that I did because these groups, again, you meet the people, you educate yourself, and you actually find a lot of these. If you're trying to locate those last 2 cards of a set, get into a Facebook group.
It's impossible without it.
Yeah.
Impossible.
It is. And at least so far, and I mean, I've been in it for a while now. So far, my experience is everyone is just helpful. The groups that we're in are just, it's a great community to be in. There's no cutthroat people, at least I experience. I mean, I'm sure there are some bad eggs, but for, it's just, it's a great spot. So, I mean, kudos to you for already nailing down 20 people for this show. It's great. So we have our next 20 weeks lined up. So we're good.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
So now that you're newly back into this, I was kind of curious, what's been your craziest story so far in the hobby the last couple of years, or like your wildest story, or maybe your just most interesting card purchase or card deal or something like that? What's that you can talk about, I guess.
Yeah, there's two that come to mind right away. So I am also working on the 1986 autograph set. And I've been doing a lot of my purchases like directly through Facebook. And you're putting a lot of trust in people. You don't know them. You only have a picture of them. You do a little back and forth texting with them. And I mean, these autograph cards, they're worth a decent amount of money, and you're putting a lot of trust. So there have been a couple deals, Nick, where I've definitely been nervous, right? But it's about going back to that community, because one of the big things, it's called vouching, right? So when you're about to do a deal with somebody, you ask the group, hey, can you vouch for so and so? And at least that brings a little bit of comfort level. But there have certainly been a few occasions where, I go and pay the person, and I'm just fingers crossed. So that's been a bit of a wild ride, a little bit of an adrenaline rush too, doing that.
Oh, for sure.
But the coolest card for me, and you probably even know my answer. I'm a huge Larry Bird fan, and a Magic Johnson fan. Like growing up, I guess I hated Magic Johnson in a way, but I also respected him because I'm a Boston Celtics fan for the audience, and I've always wanted the 1980 Topps Larry Bird, Magic, Dr. J card, and now that I've dove so deep,
for the audience, this card has all three guys on it, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting card because it's not just one card. It's actually three cards that are together.
You can rip them.
You can rip them, but this card's from 1980.
And it's not ripped, right?
And it's not ripped. So, I mean, how many of these cards are actually not ripped? I mean, many people ripped them and just taped them right to their wall, right? So that was very interesting, chasing the autographs of those, right? It started with Dr. J at a show that I went to. I was just lucky enough that he was there one day. And
yeah, that's for the audience. This was 15 minutes from our house, and we decided an hour beforehand that we wanted to start this.
Yeah.
So it's you're being humble there. We actually in 1 hour managed to drive there, find a 1980 card, crack it open.
Find two, because you had one, I had one.
Find two, crack it open, meet Dr. J, get him to sign it, and get out.
Yeah, and Nick forgot to also mention that in his backpack, he carried this heavy-duty, like, tile cutter.
Sure.
That we used, and we'll get into this at some point, too, I'm sure. Why did he have a tile cutter? But to crack those slabs. And it's been great. And that card, I've now finished. I finished a couple weeks ago because Larry Bird just did a big signing. He was, like, the last one I needed. And it just, like, meant a lot to me because I've wanted that card for so long. And not only did I get the card, but each one of those players interacted with my card. Each one of them touched my card.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So that right now, those are the two that stand out. What about for you?
Yeah, I mean that card. That's one of the few cards that's probably worthy for my home office desk. I think that's one that's going to be on display when it gets back eventually. Yeah, it's funny. Before I kind of mention my wildest story, you brought up something I see in the chat boards all the time. It's almost like card safety. So, we're obviously making major purchases on trust, which is pretty wild. And so there are some safeguards you can take for that. Some of the basic ones, you're in a big group. You get vouchers for them from that group. You find 5 or 6 other people who have done business with this person. That's not like family. And then they can actually vouch for them and say, yeah, he's a good guy. That's step one. You can always make sure they possess the card by asking them. They call it coining. And all coining means is they take a picture of the card. They have today's date and their name on it in an unphotoshoppable way. And that means that they possess that card today. So at least you know they have it. You've got some vouchers, and there are ways you can send with some security, like PayPal goods and services. You can get your money back. You can file a dispute. I very rarely send, friends and family or cash or anything like that, just because even with vouchers, something can go wrong. So, we'll get into that in future episodes, but it's pretty. You got to do some basic things like that before you buy it.
I need you to tell the audience because it is very cool. So Nick doesn't just do like a boring index card for his coin with his name and the date on it. He's got a really cool, and I'm kind of jealous, but he's got like a really interesting actual coin. What are you using to coin your cards?
Now I wish I had it with me, but on the next one we do,
Yeah.
I'll make sure I have it. So I'm a huge John Wick fan. Love all the movies. It's just great popcorn movie, fun. And they have a gold coin that gets you into the hotel there. Mm-hmm. And so for 1 year, APMEX was running these. It's 1 ounce of gold, and it's literally the exact replica of the John Wick coin. And I thought, what perfect thing to have. It's way cooler than a Post-it note with my name and date on it. So nobody else has got it.
No.
And I just post that with the card, and they know it's mine.
I need to somehow top you, but that's going to be a hard one. So let's get to your what's your wild stories?
The wildest story. It's also a little bit of motivation for everyone out there. I basically was scammed in early 2022. So when I started the 86 Fleer set, actually before I started the 86 Fleer set, I was getting a bunch of cards, 1969 tops signed by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, which you can do. You can send to his foundation, pay him a fee, he signs the card. It's fantastic. And I was kind of, cracking open nice cards, having him sign them, and selling the ones that I didn't want, and then keeping the one that I liked. So I ran into somebody who wanted that card, and he was willing to do a trade. And the trade worked out. He was trading a PSA 7 Michael Jordan rookie card from 1986. And I was trading that, and the trade went down fine until I got the card and I submitted to PSA for a new label because it was the old label. And then I got a call from the head grader saying, wah, wah, wah. They said, this is not a real Michael Jordan card. It's a reprint. The case is all wrong, yada, yada, yada. So I was burned because that's a pretty valuable card. And, I was pretty bummed out. Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. But, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been beat up plenty of times, and you got to kind of get back up. And I love this stuff. So I talked to the guy, and to be fair, he was given that card. He did not know it was fake. Yeah. And he wanted to do right by me. And he said, that's my buddy. I'll deal with that. Will you accept an entire raw set of 1986 Fleer without the Jordan as compensation just because this went awry, and it obviously, will that work for both of us? I'm like, yep, deal. And then I got these cards, and I was like, well, these are cool. I had these when I was like 7. They're long gone, or I don't know, maybe they're in my parents' attic. But I was like, what am I going to do with these things? I'm not just going to sit here and stare at them. So I took the Kareem out, and I'm like, well, I've been getting Kareem stuff signed.
You've been doing well with him.
I know how to do that. So I sent that in, got that signed with his full signature, and beautiful card. And then I thought, like, well, okay. During COVID, you and I got into this a little. I was mailing players cards for fun, just active players. Like I'd mail to the teams, and I'm like, well, can you mail to like retired players? Yeah. Little did I know that there are lists out there, websites out there for, we're talking like $8 a month type of fee, a couple cups of coffee to be on. And you can get the player's address information. You can get feedback and photos of other people who have mailed, and you can actually see, okay, well, this guy literally a week ago returned somebody's mail. They're probably going to return mine unless I say something wrong in the letter. And you do, and I sent them off. So I started sending I think like 40 out of the 130. I sent them out to, the retired players, and it was basically free. They signed for free. Some of them have fees and donations and stuff like that. And then I'm like, well, all right, I've got a third of the set. Like, let's roll. Like, I'm not just going to, do this thing partially. So that's when I went hard on the Facebook groups and Instagram and just I could shout out like 17 people who have helped me on this. I could not have done it without them. I finished it off July. So that scam, I guess, if you will, was January or February of 22. And then July 22, I bought the rookie Jordan 1986 Fleer autograph card off of Golden, and I was done.
So that was July. It. That was the last card.
That was it. So yeah, 4 or 5 months. It was crazy. So that's my wildest ride, just like a total down in the dumps type thing. And then I just turned it around. And
Lemons into lemonade right there. Is what that was.
Yeah, without that happening, I don't think I'd have the set. I don't
No.
even know if I would be progressing into the other sets I'm working on. It's crazy.
So you mentioned you've been doing a lot through the mail. What is the term that they use when you're sending things through the mail? Because some of our audience probably hears this from time to time.
Yeah. So this isn't. We'll probably have an entire show about acronyms,
Yeah.
but it's called TTM,
Okay.
right? That's the short,
Yeah.
but it literally stands for through the mail. And all that is you have an envelope with a stamp addressed to the player. You have a note, saying some nice things, asking for an autograph. It's sort of a letter of request. You have the card. Sometimes if you want a certain color, you can include the Sharpie. And you step it up from an envelope to a manila envelope for, a few bucks or whatever. But essentially the idea is you mail a card to a player, you ask them to sign it for you, and in that card, you include a self-addressed stamped envelope back to you.
That's awesome.
It makes, like you were saying, you get an adrenaline rush when you're at a Celtics game and you meet somebody. But when you go out to the mailbox every day, I know I'm 43 and it doesn't take much to get me excited anymore, but it's fun to head out and check the mail every day and see these cards. So
It is.
I highly recommend it just for a hobby. You can go way beyond sports cards. I just got a really beautiful Pixar card back from Tim Allen. It was totally free. Has pieces of the Toy Story movie in the card. He signed it, and it came out great. So
Yeah. A lot of celebrities do that. Just random ones too, like Kelly Clarkson. I found she has a rookie card, an Upper Deck American Idol rookie card, and I found out that she signed. So, it's just an example of these random ones. And is it going to ever be worth anything? I don't know, but it's a cool story. But you're right. We should we need to do probably at least one show on TTM.
yeah, it's
Because-
a dying art, but it still works.
Yeah, and we'll get into it in that show, so I just want to tease this out, but you and I are on the same page that you can really increase the value of your cards just by get an autograph on there. Like even some of this, like these junk cards that you have that maybe like I can only get like $3 on eBay for. Hey, it might be worth it to see if that player signs, and all of a sudden that $3 card is worth $150 or more. So yeah, I don't want to steal our thunder for a later show, but we have to do a couple shows around TTM.
Yeah, it's almost like good for the environment too, right? Like you rip packs, and what happens to those base cards, right? They're probably going in the trash. Well, I did that with NASCAR with my son. We opened a bunch of NASCAR packs. I didn't know what to do with them. I probably sent 25 of them out to NASCAR drivers because my son's 8 and he thinks that's awesome.
The drivers are great.
They're great.
Yeah.
They sign pictures of their cars. They're awesome. And it was super fun. And I mean, not that I'm going to like sell these per se, but the value increase is there. Plus, like it's fun. You know?
It is
Cool.
It is.
So the other thing I wanted to ask you, so you've dove in. I mean, these are our kind of like crazy stories or whatever, but what has been like the most surprising thing about the hobby for you right now? Like what's been the biggest surprise or like the craziest thing you've noticed or even like something controversial,
Well, getting back into the hobby a couple years ago, I realized how much Panini kind of owns the market. It's Panini and Topps, right? And it just all the different parallels that Panini and Topps have, and it was overwhelming. It was definitely overwhelming. Kind of keeping up with all those, and well, which one's worth it? Like this one looks shiny. Is this one worth something? Like how many of these cards were made? So that was a bit kind of shocking when I got back into it. But some of the things like I'm watching for right now, very interested in Fanatics. I mean, Fanatics is going to be a massive player in the space very, very soon. It's already started. Like there's a big conference called the National going on this week, and Fanatics, I'm sure, I wish we were there, but Fanatics, I'm sure, is all over that place. So I definitely kind of want to see, because that to me was a bit shocking. Like, here's this apparel brand who like crushes it with NBA gear and MLB and all these sports gear, and they jumped in and they bought out the rights to like all these all these different leagues from Panini, like right underneath them, and Panini was the big dog.
Yeah, for almost a decade.
Huge.
Yeah.
I mean, that company, Panini's been around for a while too. So that's been a bit that's a bit shocking when I first heard that, and it's kind of one of the things that I definitely want to pay attention to, and I'm sure we'll do a couple shows as more and more announcements come out there. One of the I would say surprising things actually goes to the TTM thing a bit. I've actually been pleasantly surprised with some of the connections I've actually made with the players, like with some of them. Like, you send them a note and they actually write back to you. I've had some players where it wasn't a note, it was an email, and we go back and forth. I have this one, this one player, and we'll get to it at some point when the time's right, but me and him, like, to this day, like, once a week, like, go back and forth on email together. Like, how's the family? Hey, if you're going to be in Boston soon, like, let's catch a Celtics game.
Yeah. And,
like, totally surprised. Like, that's
I mean, they're human beings, right? It's like you forget.
Yeah, they're human beings, and it's like, wow, like, just a pen and a paper and an email, and, these guys are, not all of them are busy, and they want to make connection too. So that's been kind of we'll call it a pleasant surprise for me recently. So What about you? What are you tracking? What's the shocking, surprising things that you're thinking about?
Yeah, you mentioned Fanatics. I want to talk about that a little bit later because I think they're going to do hopefully some incredible stuff to kind of rise the tide for everybody. I'm actually excited about what they're going to do for the hobby. It's pretty every day. I feel like they're into something interesting, and their CEO is just amazing. I think he's doing a great job. So what was surprising for me is similar path to you, right? Like, I get into these cards, and there's like, I feel like there's 117 different parallels. There's like zebra stripes and like purple polka dots. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, when I was a kid, I'd open the pack and that was the set. That's it. I mean, yes, there were some like inserts, like there should be some like artist drawings or something. And then in the 90s, obviously, they did a little bit of that, but nothing like this. I can't even estimate how many of these things are being printed. And, I had no idea. My 8-year-old son's opening this up, and it's like a goldfish. He's like, this one's shiny. This is got to be worth a lot of money. It's so shiny, I don't know, man. Let's check it out. Let's go on eBay and see what it's selling for. Probably 5 cents, but that's okay. So that was interesting to me, and it's kind of, I don't want to poo-poo the whole thing because it's cool to get kids into the hobby any which way, whether that's opening a modern pack and enjoying that parallel, or opening it almost like a lottery ticket and doing what they call a break, which we'll talk about some other time. But I mean, that's fine, to do those things. For me, that kind of drove me away from modern a bit, where as a, I like to collect things, and, when you collect something, you want it to be a little rare. So, vintage, they're not printing any more of them. And they, if they're signed, especially by a player that's deceased, now you're talking some pretty low numbers. Like, I have a Pete Maravich rookie card, 1970 Topps. He's a Hall of Fame player. He died at the age of 40. So his rookie card, there's only 8 at PSA in existence. And I have one of them as of a couple weeks ago, which is amazing.
Yeah, Nick, the point you're making, too, around how they're not printing them anymore, not only are they not printing them anymore, but a lot of these vintage cards that you're talking about, like, they were in bike spokes back in the day.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
They're not printed anymore, but then also finding ones that are actually, have some quality to them. Maybe, the corners are okay and there's not too many scratches. I mean, you're talking less and less. The population gets smaller and smaller.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. So the most shocking thing to me over the last 2 years is how much this entire industry, market, whatever you want to call this, the hobby, sports collecting, how much of it relies on grading, and not just grading, but specifically PSA grading, which is fascinating. So I think, LZ and I were talking, we wanted to dedicate 5-6 minutes of this first episode to a little, we're going to call it Madness University. And this is going to be a chance to cover one. Love it. So for Madness University, we're going to cover one specific topic that a new collector might not know much about. And for you veteran collectors, you probably already know what I'm going to talk about, but I think this will help some people that are getting into the hobby again. So Larry, I think you wanted to serve it up for this one. So what are we going to cover today?
I did. So I'm really excited about this segment, and these first couple shows, we're going to start with what we think the audience wants to hear, especially that novice audience member. And then over time, I think we'll probably take requests on. But the first one that we dreamed up today is, and we've probably already said it in this episode 3 or 4 times already, but you hear the term raw and you hear the term slabbed for cards.
Mm-hmm.
Help the audience understand, like, what are we talking about here?
All right. There's 2 states a card can be in. Actually, 3 states, sorry. Still in the pack.
Mm-hmm.
That's, as soon as you open that pack and open it up, that is a raw card. I don't know why they call it raw, but nothing has happened to it, so that might be the reason.
Mm-hmm.
So there's in the pack, now you have a raw card, and then a graded card. This is interesting, and I think it's helped the hobby move forward quite a bit. A graded card means that it has gone to a third-party authenticator, of which there are many. PSA is the largest, followed by Beckett and SGC, and there are some others that are doing well. So it's gone to a third-party authenticator for what could be a couple reasons. Reason number 1, you think that card is mint condition, and you want somebody to agree that it's in mint condition. And so you'll send it to them very carefully, and then that third-party authenticator will handle it very carefully.
There's an art to even delivering.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, there is.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
So they will, for a fee, depending on the value of the card, they will slab it. Now, what that means basically is sealing it in plastic, but it's sonically sealed in a hard plastic that really cannot be tampered with. Unless you have a backpack, unless you have a backpack with tile cutters and a chisel.
Tile cutters, yeah.
So you can crack them open to get signed, but so the raw card can go to an authenticator. So one reason you might do that is to get a high grade. So PSA 10 would be the highest grade. That's like the mint condition. Beckett does a pristine, which is even higher than that. There are very few of those. But there's other reasons you can send it to an authenticator. Let's say you opened a pack of cards, you got a LeBron James card, and somehow you magically got him to sign that, right? That exchange was just between you and him. There might not be a video of that happening. There's just no proof. So you have this card signed by him, but somebody might want to touch it because it's LeBron, but probably not. So you would send it to one of these authenticators, and they would not only grade the card if you wanted, you don't have to, they would also say, yes, this autograph is real. And you would then get it slabbed, and it would say, basically, autographed by LeBron James, 2003 Topps Chrome, something like that. And so that's kind of what a raw card and a slabbed card are, and that's just terms we use in the industry. So raw is sort of the naked card, and slabbed is anything that's been sent to any third-party authenticator that's been sealed in plastic.
So for the audience members that are just getting into this, how can we help them determine what cards maybe they should send in?
Right.
Is kind of the first part of the question. And there's obviously a cost to this. There's a shipping cost, but then there's fees included as well. So also, if you could get into, like, what are we talking? How much money are we talking to get these things slabbed?
Yeah, so this depends. I mean, it goes back to the first question, why do we grade cards in general? If you could picture a time before there were third-party authenticators, if you have some good card stock and a nice printer, you can probably fake some people out with these things. So before PSA even existed, there was a lot of fraud in the industry that just by PSA existing, they've helped eliminate, which I think is wonderful. It's not wonderful when you send in a card and it ends up being fake, but it's an important service that's there. Now, I think, when determining what to grade, you have to consider a few things, right? what is the future of this card going to be? Am I going to sell it tomorrow, next month, in 5 years, or never? There's an answer to each one of those questions. If the answer is never, then it's a very personal thing. Do you think the slab looks nice? Do you want it protected in case one of your kids, bangs into it or something like that?
And they all look different too. And they all have variations, every company too. So some are better than others.
They have different labels. They have all sorts of, different designs depending on the card grade and everything like that. So, you have to consider that. I think you could just do it for personal look and feel and protection. Now, you also want to make sure, if you're going to get it graded, that the value of the card, once you get it graded, is more than what you're going to pay in grading fees.
I've gotten burned many times with that.
So if you're sending in a $5 card to PSA and you're going to spend $50 to grade it, it's just silly, unless you're really obsessed with that card and want it to look good or whatever. I think you have to be careful there. There are some that are obvious, right? If you've got a $5,000 card signed by Dr. J, Larry Bird, and Magic, you've got to send that in. You've got to get it slabbed for long-term value.
And for the protection of it too. I mean, we're talking like you mentioned, like these things are sealed up.
Oh yeah,
these are better than the top loaders that we've used in the past.
For sure. So you definitely want to be careful there and get things like that slabbed. So it's really a choice. If you're going to sell it, you probably have to slab it. If it's for your personal collection, otherwise known as PC, you don't need to, but it's good for protection. And maybe you pass away someday and your kids do want to sell it and they're glad you did. So it's really a personal choice. It's almost a card by card basis, and it's a situation by situation basis.
Sure.
And there's fees involved, so it's scaled up. You can get a bulk order through PSA for $15 a card, depending on the year that they're great, the card was created or whatever, all the way up to a $50,000 Michael Jordan rookie card that's going to set you back $3,000 because they're going to have a greater look at it for hours.
Wow.
So there's a huge range, and all of this information is on PSA's website. You can look it up pretty easily.
Yeah, you used the Michael Jordan analogy as well. I mean, I don't know, but I would, unless maybe you can educate me a bit here. What I've seen, I think Jordan is the most counterfeit card out there.
Unbelievable.
Like by like a mile.
A mile.
A mile. So yes, if you come in the possession of a Jordan card, absolutely recommend sending that in.
It's good to know these terms too, because you may want to buy a Michael Jordan card and you're on Craigslist and somebody's got it, and if that's not slabbed and it's raw, there's obviously huge risk there. I've done this. It's worked out wonderfully, and I've gotten burned.
Yep.
I've also become a bit of an expert on some cards, like the Michael Jordan rookie. You couldn't imagine. There's about 7 or 8 things you can look for on it that really can't be faked, that the novice can't photocopy. But
that would be a good show.
Yeah, believe me. So it's knowing these terms is important when buying cards too. I think.
Yeah. So you've mentioned PSA a lot.
Yep.
I think the market understands that PSA is, at least today, the top dog in this space. Can you talk about why they're the top dog, how they got there, just a little bit of history on that particular company?
Yeah, I mean, just briefly, the long story short is PSA was the first, right? So there was no grading till PSA arrived. They were the first ones to come up with this slab idea where you've got a state of a card permanently sealed in time, unless you have tile cutters. And then they came up with card grades. If it's near mint, that's a 9. If it's ripped in half or close to ripped in half, that's poor. That's a 1. And they have standards that are actually published, and it's pretty cool to follow. They lead the market because they were first. They are considered the premium product, very much similar to Mercedes or Apple or something like that. They cost the most. They're, to some, they're frustrating just because they just collect that money, it seems like. But to me, they've sort of earned it over the year. They've pioneered this industry, and they deserve it. It's I know we were joking in the car ride over. It's especially for the guy listeners. It's like De Beers. they kind of they pioneered diamonds, and they control the supply and demand. And even if you don't want to buy a diamond ring, you meet a girl when you're 24, 25, and she says, I want a diamond ring. You say, okay.
That's it.
And you do it.
Sign me up.
So it's the same thing with PSA. If you want your Jordan to be worth $50,000 in a slab and not zero raw, okay, sounds good, PSA. Here's my $3,000.
It's one of the easiest pieces of advice that we give in some of these Facebook groups that we're in, right? Because once in a while, we will get some random person, like a new person to the group, who comes in and posts like, hey, I found this Jordan in my attic. I'm thinking about selling it. What can I get for it? And you'll get like 15 automatic responses saying, before you sell it, get it slabbed. Because once you do, to your point, like,
increase the value.
Oh, it could be 50 grand. It could be 100 grand if it's a 10, which is,
and you also get the
PSA's
sharks.
biggest.
So if there's any audience member that has expensive cards, the sharks will come out and say, "Oh, I'll buy that off you for. I don't know if it looks good, but how's $300 sound?" So yeah, if you have valuable cards, always best to consult people. I mean, you can even hit me and LZ up. I'm happy to tell you what to do with your card, what it's worth, whether it's worth sending in or not.
Yeah.
Cool.
Good. Well, I think that's probably good coverage. We might, again, teasing out other episodes, whether we want to cover some of the other grading companies, because some of the other ones are starting to make waves too now as well. So
yeah, of course, and they all have different dynamics to them. Some actually have descriptions on why they graded a certain way, like tag grading, and Beckett has subgrades. We'll tell you the corners were this and the centering was that.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow,
we're almost at time is flying by. So I want to close out every show, and for this show, me and Larry will do ours. But every guest that I will ever have on, I'm going to ask them if there's any sports figure, dead or alive, that you could magically get a coffee with for, let's say, an hour or two, something like that. Who would it be and why? I'll let you go first, LZ.
Oh, all right. Big Celtics fan. I think for me, it would be someone who's deceased. It wouldn't actually be a player. It would be Red Auerbach. I mean, for those that have studied or heard about him, he was the coach of the Celtics back in the day. He was the GM. He had many different roles for that team, but he had such a huge personality. And I think he won how many championships? Like,
can't even count.
Many,
at least 11.
Many championships. And I mean, oh boy, the stories that he probably has.
He'd probably be a fun cup of coffee.
He definitely would with Russell and Kuzi, Havlicek. I mean, he was part of bringing those guys in. He was part of bringing Bird, and the shenanigans of bringing in Bird too, with the way that deal went down, and the trade to get McHale and Parrish in there. I just think big personality. Again, I'm a big Celtics fan.
Our producer's helping us here. So
he's got
16 NBA titles for Red Auerbach. Thank you.
16? Oh, wow. Yeah, I was going off of Russell. We always talk about Russell's 11, but I'm like, I bet you there's probably more than that.
Yeah, he was around before and after.
Yeah, so I mean, if you gave me another half an hour to think about that one, I probably would have, maybe had somebody else. But that one, certainly, I mean, the stamp that he put on basketball in the NBA and City of Boston and all those players that he drafted in the 16 championships. That's a pretty solid one for me, Nick.
Yeah, good businessman too.
Yeah.
So you get advice there.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So for me, I thought about this for a while. I mean, there's obviously too many to count, but I'm not the biggest baseball fan, but I think for me it would actually be Babe Ruth because, he was larger than life.
Mm-hmm.
He was part of the media back when there was just radio, newspaper, magazines, and I just think he would have amazing stories. He'd probably want more than coffee. But I think it'd be really cool just to hear about, what it was like pitching and hitting. I mean, yeah, we've got Ohtani now, which is amazing. But before Ohtani, this didn't exist after him. And he did it, and he did it well. And, he just broke so many records. So, this is 100 years ago, and I'm a sucker for, old eras and stuff. It'd be cool to hear about just what life was like as a millionaire in the 20s.
Certainly.
Where did you go on vacation? What are you up to? What schools are your kids in? And I don't know. It'd be pretty neat, both from a sports perspective and a life perspective. So definitely Babe Ruth.
That's a
for me.
good one. That's a solid one. Yeah. An icon. That's like Mount Rushmore type player right there.
For sure.
So, yeah.
Wow, this is great. We away from our families, we were able to talk sports cards for about an hour and enjoy it. So really cool. You have anything else or?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say to the audience, I mean, I hope you got something out of today. We're going to try to do a really good job of getting this podcast out there, whether it's YouTube channel, Facebook, all the different, podcast venues as well. And we want to hear your feedback. Again, I mean, the Madness University, especially we want to get that going and get questions in here. I didn't mention it before, but I am very close to collecting the 1986 Flair set. So I know a lot of people are interested in that one. Every time I get a new card, it goes on my Instagram and Facebook. So if people want to follow that journey, and you can go back and you can see how long the journey's been, I'm Autograph Stalker on Instagram.
Perfect.
So that's a good one to follow. But yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
This is a momentous podcast, and I was happy to be here. So thanks.
Great.
Thanks,
And
Nick.
for the audience, I'm at Boston Card Hunter on Instagram. And hopefully you enjoyed this. Being a new podcast, we can obviously use your help. If you really did like this episode, share it with your friends, leave us a positive review. We'll keep churning these out. Hopefully you liked it.
Yes.
That's
All
the
right.
pod.
Thanks, everybody.